And you know, you have Cliff Godwin up at ECU. You have Don McDonnell out at Louisville. Guys like that, Josh Elander, assistant at Tennessee. Like, we've gotten to know these names pretty well this week if you did not already otherwise know them before the week began. But whoever they hire has to be able to bring South Carolina back to its days of glory of years past. And of course, Ray Tanner, when he ended his career here at South Carolina, 2 back-to-back national championships, played for a third one. This team and this program had never seen success like that before, and unfortunately have not come anywhere close to sniffing that kind of success since then. And look, we know that South Carolina as a program has been on the downslope since then, but there's this belief and this conversation within this fan base that South Carolina is still somewhere close to the top in the SEC. We know they're not at the mountaintop right now, but the consensus is this program is still hovering around that area of being close, right? And it got me curious just how far South Carolina has fallen off since Ray Tanner did indeed retire. They handed the reins over to Chad Holbrook. That didn't work out. And then we had Mark Kingston for the past, 7 years? So I went through last night and assessed all the teams in the SEC and what they have accomplished compared to what South Carolina has accomplished in the past, now 12 years, because Ray Tanner's last year was in 2012. Since then, 9 teams in the SEC have made at least one College World Series appearance, compared to South Carolina, who has made none. Since then, there are 8 teams in the SEC with just as many, if not more, College World Series appearances as South Carolina. And the 2 teams, 8 or more teams with as many super appearances as South Carolina. Of course, South Carolina's been to 4 supers since Ray Tanner retired. And the 2 teams that have just as many super appearances as South Carolina are Ole Miss and Tennessee. Well, those 2 programs have also been to Omaha as well. Both those teams going twice since then. And obviously, Tennessee has the opportunity to go a third time this year. So based on that metric, I would put those programs ahead of South Carolina in that list of teams that have made supers, since then. And then 7 teams in the SEC have more appearances in the NCAA tournament than South Carolina's had since 2012. So if you take 9 teams ahead of South Carolina being about 9th on the list of teams making it to supers, and then 8th again on the list of teams with when it comes to making the NCAA tournament. When you do the numbers, you do the average of numbers of where South Carolina ranks in those 3 categories. That means South Carolina is a bottom half program in the SEC in the past 12 years. And that's something that shouldn't be shocking necessarily, but is a little bit of an eyebrow raiser. Like, wow, I didn't realize that they were that far behind what these other teams in the conference have done. And look, this is not a perfect metric. Just because a team has made it to a College World Series and won a College World Series in the case of Ole Miss doesn't mean that they're still, a dominant top flight program as of right now. Like, all this stuff fluctuates and it changes, but we gauge so much of what success is in college baseball based on how far you go in the postseason. And I thought about including what teams have done in the SEC tournament in this metric as well, but again, that is a little subjective. There are teams in there that don't need to go far in the SEC tournament. We all know that. So I chose to exclude that. So I'm looking specifically at what you're doing in the NCAA tournament. And again, Carolina's had a fair amount of tournament appearances, but half the league's had more. Again, they've had an okay amount of super appearances, but over half the league has more than them. And then obviously they've not made it to the College World Series at all since then. And that, in the eyes of this fan base, as it should be, is unacceptable. Because again, it's not like it was just Ray Tanner. If during Ray Tanner's tenure, he was the only person that had ever led South Carolina to the College World Series into Omaha, then you just say, okay, well, Ray Tanner was just a great coach, one of the best coaches in college baseball history, and we're just not that kind of program without him. No, there is a history of South Carolina going to the College World Series and making trips to Omaha before Ray Tanner got here. So this program has been built on this mindset and this idea that you should be in regular contention for that. Not every single year, because not everybody goes every single year, but on a regular basis over the course of, 5 to 7 years, you should be talking about anywhere between, maybe 3, at best maybe 4 Omaha appearances. And South Carolina has just not been that program since then. Which, by the way, if you want to just make these numbers look a little bit worse here, Texas and OU are coming in, and Texas has bested South Carolina in all those categories: more tourney appearances, more supers, and more trips to College World Series. And even Oklahoma has made it to a College World Series since then. So if we add those two teams into the mix as they'll be coming in 2025, South Carolina is realistically about 10th or 11th out of a 16-team SEC in terms of what's been accomplished over the past decade. That's bad. And that's something that is going to be, a process to claw back from. Now, again, you're not at the bottom of the barrel. You're not Missouri or something like that, where you just have no history of success and there's no hope on the horizon that you're going to be anywhere near that upper echelon of, the conference again. It's going to take some work, but South Carolina can get themselves back into being one of those feared programs in the SEC one day again. But you have to make the right hire. And this goes back to what we've talked about all week long, where you look at Chad Holbrook, where you take the assistant, you promote him and say, okay, well, he's been ingrained in this program. He's going to keep this legacy going on and continue to have success. Well, that didn't work. Then you bring in Mark Kingston, somebody that was okay at the Group 5 level. He wasn't setting the world on fire, it didn't seem like, and I wasn't here at the time, but, the notion I've gotten from many people is that was a very underwhelming hire when it did indeed happen. So you've gone the route of bringing in the guy from a mid-major program. You can't take that risk again on either one of those kind of things. So when we talk about Monty Lee potentially being the head coach, I'm not sold on that. And look, I know there are a lot of people that think that Monty Lee's time at Clemson was sabotaged to a degree because he was a Carolina guy, and when he was brought in as the assistant a year and a half ago, a lot of people thought, hey, well, he's just in line to take the job whenever Kingston gets fired. I can't take that risk. You know what I mean? And look, his track record at at Clemson in 7 seasons, yeah, he made 4 regionals, no supers, no College World Series appearances. And even if there was some kind of vendetta against him up there in the upstate, I still can't take that risk. You know what I mean? And he made the 1 super at College of Charleston, which helped him get the job, at Clemson to make that transition. But I still just can't, in my good conscience, if I'm the one making the hiring, take that kind of risk on a guy that I can't definitively say is going to be able to take this program to the next level. And the fan base, you guys have been waiting on the Firehouse Subs text line all week long. A lot of y'all seem split on that too, where we've got a lot of people like, yes, hire Monty Lee, and a lot of people like, please, God, don't hire Monty Lee. So it's not like this is something that has all the support of the fan base behind it if you decided to make that decision. Same time, the Landon Powell thing comes up a lot. People are saying, oh, yeah, former Gamecock, he's having success in North Greenville, all that kind of stuff. Still, that's Division II, and God love him for what he's doing up there. That is fantastic, and more power to him. But there's not a guarantee that success at coaching at Division II is going to translate over to the SEC. And the most competitive the SEC's ever been. They did just set a record for the most teams ever to appear in the NCAA tournament from one single conference. This league is tough, and as tough as it's ever been. And I can't, have confidence knowing somebody's going to be able to come in from the D2 level. And again, I get it. He understands the program. He understands the community and the fan base, all that kind of stuff. That is great. But still, I got to go with more of a sure thing when it comes to who I want leading this program to be able to take them to Omaha. So, you talk about a guy like Cliff Godwin. You talk about a Don McDonald, guys that we've already brought up several times this week that have been to Omaha. that know what it takes to get a team there, that know what it takes to be regular visitors to that level. Now, at the same time, could they come in here and flop? Absolutely. Because, the environment or the way that they, are with the players or the fan base, it may not end up working out. But you have a better chance of having success with somebody that's gone out and proven to everyone that they can get to Omaha at the Division I level. And in the case of a guy like Don McDonald at the Power 5 level as well, they've proven it. And again, they give you a statistical better chance of making it to Omaha if you do indeed hire somebody like that, as opposed to somebody that you're taking a little bit more risk on. And look, do I think Josh Elander at Tennessee could be a great head coach? I'm sure he could be. And you look at a guy like Wes Johnson in Georgia that I brought up several times this week as an example of an assistant that can come in and turn a program around in the blink of an eye. And, Georgia's playing their first Super in 16 years. If I'm Carolina, I can't take that risk, though. I need to hire an absolute sure thing before I decide, or before, this continues to go in the wrong direction. Because if you botch this hire, you're continuing to set this program back even further. And while we're not talking about South Carolina being at the bottom of the barrel in the SEC as of right now, they could be if you have a hire that further tanks the program forward. And tank's a strong word when you talk about Kingston. It wasn't tanking the program. It was just underachieving. But if you make the wrong hire and that continues to drag the program down for another 3, 4, 5 years, then yeah, I think we are talking about South Carolina being in that, at that point in time, 14th, 15th, 16th in success in the SEC later on down the road. So you got to get this right. You can't screw this hire up. And I imagine we're going to have a decision before too long, and hopefully they make the right one. So again, we're going to continue to follow this until a decision is made, even after decision is made, as we break down whoever that hire ends up being. It is the Extra Point. Coming up next, a little bit early this week, she had some prior commitments going on later on in the morning. So we'll talk to Jen Jensen coming up next after a interesting and chaotic finish at Gateway this past weekend for the NASCAR Cup Series. Break down all things racing coming up next. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you here on The Game. Oh, man, there is truly never a bad time to head on down to Twin Peaks, but the month of June might just be the best time of the entire year to get on down to Twin Peaks, just down the road from us here at the Vista. The voting for Miss Twin Peaks 2024 is on, and voting for Miss Popular is officially live. Head over to MissTwinPeaks2024.com to learn more about the contest and cast your vote, or cast your 5 votes for your favorite Twin Peaks girl. The Miss Twin Peaks live stream of the contest will be coming up on June the 11th. Also, you have coming up on June the 14th, so just over a week away, National Bourbon Day. The Twin Peaks Bar was built to celebrate National Bourbon Day. True American classics, barrel selects, and Grandpa's Stash. You can't go wrong with this selection. Raise your spirits and celebrate with the best bourbon in the game at your local lodge, which again is our friends at Twin Peaks, just down the street from us, right here in the Vista.
Whoa, Blaney's out of gas. Something's wrong.
White flag, 1 lap to go, sponsored by Credit One Bank, and we've got a new leader.
I think he's out of gas. And I think he gets an official race, too. White flag, no caution. Austin Cindric, oh my gosh, what is happening?
That's why Suarez was able to get around Blaney. Something stumbled on the number 12.
How about this?
Austin Cindric rolls into turn number 3 after starting from the outside pole with only 1 top 10 finish this entire season, and he is going to the playoffs. Austin Cindric wins in St. Louis.
Well, that was exciting. Welcome back into the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you here on your Wednesday on the Game. And as we do each and every Wednesday, June Jensen joined me on Love Chevrolet phone lines, talk a little bit of racing. That was the call on Sunday on Fox Sports. Mike Joy, Clint Boyer, Kevin Harvick in the booth. As Austin Cindric surprisingly picks up the victory at Gateway, only his second career Cup Series win, the first coming in the 2022 Daytona 500. It took a little bit of a mistake by his teammate running out of gas there, Ryan Blaney, but lo and behold, Austin Cindric is indeed back in victory lane.
Well, I'll tell you what, and I mean, he qualified really well, so we knew he potentially had the car, and really he stayed relevant the whole race. It's not like, bad things happened to 10 people in front of him before he, made the score and got the win. So, yeah, I was really impressed with him, and I'm excited for the team overall.
Well, Austin Cindric's such an interesting case because, I go back to his time in the Xfinity Series and the Truck Series where, man, he was so good at road courses and really came along at a lot of other types of tracks and en route to winning the Xfinity Series title in 2020, I guess that was. But it really, we thought he was going to be able to come into the Cup Series and set the world on fire. And maybe it's just the next-gen car or whatever it may be, but he's just not lived up to that hype. And I agree with you. I think he was there all weekend long, qualified well, raced well, had good strategy too. So this wasn't something he just kind of fluked into. It did take his teammate running out of gas, but, he did run one of the best races we've seen him run in his Cup Series career. And maybe this could be the catalyst for success to come. Or maybe just a blip on the radar. We'll have to see.
Yep, I think there, like you said, there is potential there. We did expect greater things earlier on, but you're right. Maybe they have found something and starting to put the pieces together, and I would love to see him do well.
We really feel for both Ryan Blaney as well as Christopher Bell. Well, in the final 30 laps, so many things happened. Well, we had a great battle between Bell and Blaney that we thought was going to be for the win. Bell ends up, blowing his motor. Still managed to finish in the top 10, but could not compete for the win anymore. Then Blaney looked like he was on cruise to pick up his first victory since winning the championship last year. And then a little bit short on fuel, a lap short on fuel to be exact. And how they didn't get the car full on that last pit stop, I still don't know. I think they only took 1 can of gas as opposed to 2, but they calculated wrong, and again, it kind of fell into the hands of Austin Cindric. But you feel for 2 guys in Blaney and Bell that were kind of the class of the field for a lot of the race.
They were, and yeah, you really are kind of curious, like, okay, how does this happen? Because really, Blaney had enough of a lead that he could have been conserving some fuel and probably gotten that lap and made it. So, yeah, where were the calculations off? Again, not as extra can of fuel. Yeah, probably got him out of the pit a little bit sooner. But, again, I have not really gotten any official reports or heard anything as far as what they officially deemed. It just looks like a series of unfortunate events that led to that. So I'm hopeful. I mean, Blaney's good, but I think he's really ready for a win.
Well, with that brings us to now 9 winners on the season after 15 races in the regular season. And Cindric kind of fits in that same category as Suarez back at Atlanta, that wins that you weren't maybe expecting, but nevertheless have happened. And, this season has been full of a lot of surprises. But as we look at 11 races to go, I do wonder how close we're going to get to that total of 16 winners that could fill out the playoff field. You look at guys like Kyle Busch, Joey Logano, Alex Bowman, guys like that have not found victory lane this year. Ross Chastain as well, that have very realistic shots to do that over the next 11 weeks. I do wonder how close that number of 16 we're actually going to get.
I'm curious, too, because they really haven't had to implement that where they go more based on wins and points and everything like that if you go beyond the 16. So curious, is this going to be the year that's going to make them have to put all that into play?
Well, one thing we definitively know now is that Kyle Larson will indeed be a part of the playoffs. It was over a week-long process after he had to miss the Coke 600 due to the delay at the Indy 500, but NASCAR finally granting him the waiver yesterday, and thankfully so. You and I talked about this last week. I don't think the juice was going to be worth the squeeze if NASCAR decided to say, you know what, you missed our race. We're not okay with that. And we're going to keep you out of the playoffs because of it, because I think that could have shined a very bad light on NASCAR if they decided to follow through on that.
And the only thing that I can come up with is, why did it take so long? Because there was not one person who was saying, oh, no, this should not happen. Any commentator you talk to, anything that anybody, any other teammates or fellow drivers, that sort of thing, everybody was very much, hey, Larson is doing so many good things for the sport. This is not like he was trying to run someplace else because of a selfish need. I mean, he was elevating NASCAR. So why wouldn't you give him the waiver, and why did it take so long?
Yeah, and, to me, it was kind of NASCAR's maybe power play to just kind of prove that they were still running the ship here and, maybe wanting other teams and drivers to think twice before doing something like this. But this is such a special circumstance because there's no other race in the world, quite frankly, where a driver would be put in position to say, you know what, I'm going to take this race over my day job of running the NASCAR race wherever they would be. This is the Indy 500. A special circumstance, and Larson had every intention in the world of making the trip to Charlotte. He flew to Charlotte to run the rest of the race. The rain just ended up keeping that from happening. But, I didn't want, and one of the big things, too, if NASCAR says, you know what, Larson's not going to be in the playoffs because he missed the Coke 600, you are killing anybody running the double ever again, because nobody's going to want to take that chance saying, well, if I get rained out at Indy, then guess what? That means I have to miss the Coke 600. I'm going to miss my day job and get excluded from the playoffs. So this could have really been a ripple effect of a lot of bad things that thankfully NASCAR didn't do.
I agree. And I think, honestly, they knew. But like you said, I think timing just made it so that, we're thinking hard on it. We're really taking this case-by-case basis. We're not going to make it easy for anybody. But again, it's the Indy 500, and there is nothing that doesn't benefit NASCAR with him running in that. And like you said, he had every intention to be at the Coca-Cola 600. He doesn't just miss races to go do anything else. So I'm glad it's resolved. That's for sure. It's got, one talking point that doesn't have to continue to be talked about.
Well, and if we're being honest here, I think the waiver process in general has become almost kind of redundant at this point in time, where NASCAR has been very lenient about giving out waivers for injuries and, suspensions and all that kind of stuff, to where it didn't seem necessary to draw this out as long as they did. And with today's playoff structure, where you have stages and playoff points, where if you are missing a regular season race, you are costing yourself an opportunity to build equity for the playoffs. Like Kyle Larson missed out on the chance for 8 more playoff points and the opportunity to further build his lead in the regular season standings. Like, that's a natural deterrent to not miss races as it is. I don't even think we need waivers, quite frankly.
I totally agree. And I think Kevin Harvick kind of alluded to that as well, listening to his podcast, where it's like, really, how important are these waivers? I mean, you're shooting yourself in the foot if you don't race. So, Kyle Larson, fortunately, is in a pretty good position where there should be no reason why he shouldn't get into the playoffs, but you shouldn't keep him out of the playoffs just because of missing.
Right. Well, thankfully, they made the right decision as we head off to Sonoma this weekend. That won't be the main talking point, at least, and it won't be as we carry through the summer and get closer and closer to the NASCAR playoffs. So excited for some more road racing this weekend. Repaved Sonoma at that. I'm not sure how that's going to translate to making the racing different, but certainly interested to see what happens.
Yeah, me too, and I'm kind of excited to see, I think Allmendinger always brings something to road courses, so it'll be nice to see him there and see how he performs. But I'm looking forward to I'm ready for another road course.
Absolutely, and we'll be back next week to break that down and look ahead to the Cup Series first trip to Iowa coming up next weekend on Father's Day. That's right. Yeah, that's your neck of the woods out there.
Yeah. Get a little closer. Yeah, in fact, that's probably a little bit closer than what the race was this past week.
Well, you can give us a good breakdown of all the corn in the Midwest. I'm very intrigued.
I'm sure that'll be a fascinating conversation. Appointment listening.
Absolutely. All right. We'll talk to you next week. Appreciate it as always, Jen.
Thank you.
Again, Jen Jensen from the early game, talking racing as she does with me each and every week here on The Extra Point. Speaking of every week on The Extra Point, Dimitri Ravanos joins me every week on Wednesdays as well, and some interesting things happening up the road in Charlotte. Some changes coming to Bank of America Stadium. We'll discuss that with him coming up next. It is The Extra Point. I'm Tyler Head here on The Game.
Hello. Okay, gotcha. Just don't see you. I just see the drawing. Having one of those days, are we?
Welcome back in. Extra Point, Tyler Head along with you here on the game. I always appreciate our friends over at Georgia Pacific for sponsoring our Talking Hardwood segment. This week we're talking a lot about coaching searches. Of course, South Carolina looking for a new baseball coach after letting go of March Kingston on Monday. Now welcome in our friend each and every Wednesday, Dimitri Ravenos, joining the program. And Dimitri, you know quite a bit about coaching searches as of late between the Panthers and obviously Alabama. After Nick Saban retired, you've seen quite a few these past couple of years.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Like when I was in college at Alabama, it seemed like we had a coaching search every other year. And then we got all this time of stability with the Panthers. I would be lying to you, Tyler, if I didn't say that I thought Frank Reich was going to bring some stability. I did not expect to turn around and immediately be looking for a new coach again. But look, I'm happy with Dave Canales. I think some of the analysis of just how important he is going to be to the team and just how ready he is to lead a team is overblown. I think more of it is going to be on Bryce than the coaching staff, but there's a culture that has to change, so you can't discount the importance.
No, not at all. And here's the thing with a guy like Dave Canales is you are taking a risk on somebody that has not been a head coach before. And yes, he's shown a lot of promise in his offenses and what he's been able to do with other quarterbacks at his prior stops, but you do not definitively know for sure if he's going to translate as being a head coach. And that's a conversation that we've had a lot this week where, South Carolina is looking at some guys that have been assistants at other places to potentially fill their head coaching vacancy here. But I'm at this point, you've tried the assistant thing, you've tried the guy from a mid-major in Mark Kingston that's had some success. I think you got to definitively go out and go find somebody that has proven that they can win and take you to the College World Series at other places, because this program can't risk falling any further.
It's stupid, right? You have SEC money, go spend SEC money. And look, I would be lying to you if I told you I knew a lot about college baseball, but living in the Raleigh-Durham, Chapel Hill area of North Carolina, you know what I can tell you? Nobody thought twice about Duke baseball until about 6 years ago.
Sure.
Just go to Chris Pollard, tell him you know the ACC is collapsing, and let him fill in the number on the check and be done with it.
Well, he is certainly one of the names on the list, and we'll see if that ends up coming to fruition for South Carolina. Some interesting things are happening up the road there in Charlotte. Actually, for the first time, actually past Bank of America Stadium the other week, driving to the Speedway up there in Charlotte. I mean, looks cool from the outside, but I know obviously inside it's a little dated. It's been around for a while, and like every other stadium across the country, they are looking to modernize themselves, and they got a long list of cool upgrades they're proposing. With this stadium. How much this matters at the end of the day, if your team still sucks, I don't know, but at least you have some neat bells and whistles that are potentially coming to Bank of America Stadium, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think it matters for a couple of reasons. Number one, as much as he claims to have embraced the Charlotte market, let's be real, there is nothing tying Dave Tepper to the Carolinas. If he does not get his way, I could very much see him being the guy to volunteer to take a team to London.
Sure.
That's one. Two is, you kind of hit the nail on the head because some of these proposals for the upgrades they want to do really are for the guy that looks at a football game as going to a bar where football happens, right? So as long as the team is bad, there is still enough of a scene going on inside the stadium that people would want to be a part of. I got to be honest, I'm a little disappointed we did not get some sort of roof in order to bring other events to town. But look, the upgrades, I would describe Bank of America as dated, not a dump. If you've traveled in the SEC, you have seen some real dumps of football stadiums, right?
Right.
It's not a dump, but it's definitely been lapped by other facilities.
Well, and by the way, Tepper's company is seeking $65 million from Charlotte to help out with the stadium upgrade. And I do think that's an important point to note out there because, the upgrades include things like, new seats, better restrooms, better midway area, improved lighting, all that kind of stuff, which is fine. But again, and I always bring this up when we talk about stadiums, they are not football venues or whatever their respective sport that primarily plays there is. They are truly entertainment complexes. You look at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, you look at US Bank Stadium up in, Minneapolis, obviously Jerry World out in Dallas. Like, these places are built to accommodate for every type of event that you can have. And again, Super Bowls and Final Fours, those are really big things that these cities want to be able to bid on. And there's no way a Final Four is going to play in an open air stadium like Charlotte in the middle of April where you never know what the weather's going to be. And let alone a Super Bowl where you could be playing in, freezing rain and it being 30 degrees or something like that. Like, you have to have a roof on a lot of these places to accommodate those type of events. And again, by not having this as part of the plan, you're essentially balking at the idea of those things ever coming to Charlotte.
Yeah, and I think it's really important. Like, I got to correct you. You said that he wants $65 million in taxpayer money.
I meant $650
million. Yeah, I mean, the stadium is getting $800 million worth of upgrades, and Tepper is on the hook for well below a quarter of it. That, to me, that doesn't seem right without a roof, because you're right, it is an event facility, but without that roof, you really limit the number of events that will bring people to town. You get, 9 Panthers games a year, and one of them is a preseason game. Nobody is traveling for that.
Right.
You get the Duke's Mayo Bowl, you get the kickoff game, and sometimes you get another regional matchup, college football-wise, during the season. There are 3 more dates. Let's say you get, at most, 5 concerts a year in that venue. Well, right now you are asking the city of Charlotte to invest somewhere in the area of about $20 million per event. I don't know that that's worth it if you added that roof or some sort of covering. I heard someone say that what they have proposed in Jacksonville is not a true roof, but a glass ceiling for the place. Maybe that's a great metaphor for the Jaguars.
That's good.
But a glass ceiling for the place that could lower the temperature and also create an enclosed environment that can host those sorts of events. That would be a little bit more worth it for the city of Charlotte. I never think a billionaire should be going to his city asking for money to improve his stadium, but certainly not if it is not capable of hosting the biggest events on the sporting calendar in the country.
Well, like SoFi Stadium has the not quite a roof but glass ceiling kind of thing. I know when they played the national championship. Yeah, same with Ford Field. Like, I know with the national championship a couple of years ago, like, it rained kind of sideways, so people still got wet in there. But again, for the most part, it protects you from most weather. And again, what would, I think, be enough to entice wanting to see, a Final Four, WrestleMania, those kind of things, that you'd have to put some kind of canopy in the middle just to be safe. Otherwise there. But you
actually brought up another important one. WrestleMania, Nick Khan, the new CEO of the WWE, says that he is either thinking about moving WrestleMania or moving it back indoors.
Yes.
That what they had in Philadelphia this year is not going to happen again. So there's another major event that probably comes off the table.
Yeah, so they're actually going to be in Vegas this next upcoming year, and they're going to move it into early May, so you get a little bit better weather, which, again, you're going to be inside in Las Vegas in Allegiant Stadium, so that's not as big of an issue. But for years to come, it is going to be a little bit later on in the year where you're hoping for some better weather. So, yeah, if you have a glass roof or something over, Bank of America Stadium. You give yourself a better opportunity to host something like that. And again, bring a lot of revenue, bring people from all over the world to events like that, let alone the other things that you could bring to that stadium if you truly, went that route. But, we'll see what happens here. And like you said, it at the very least locks the Panthers in for about a decade and a half if they do have these upgrades.
Well, hell, based on the lifespan of BOA, it locks them in for 30 years if we don't get another upgrade before then.
That is very true. We'll continue our conversation with Dimitri Urvanos. You, on your podcast, have been having some very interesting lists going on as of late of great players that we never got to see in the EA video games. And your most recent list features a former South Carolina Gamecock and Panther, for that matter. What that coming up, it is The Extra Point. He's Dimitri Urvanos. Tyler Head along with you on your Wednesday here on The Game. Welcome back in. Extra Point here on the game. Tyler Head, Dimitri hanging out with another segment here. Appreciate you guys as always watching on the Game TV, sponsored by Shepherd's Glass, powered by friends over at Integrated Media. Dimitri, we have been celebrating the return of EA's college football video game, now a little over a month away. Are you on the pre-order train July 16th? Or are you going to wait until the 19th till it actually drops for all the rest of us poor people?
Oh, no, baby. I got the deluxe edition. I'm going to be there 3 days early. I am going to begin building my dynasty with, you know what, probably the University of Hawaii. I have a feeling there'll be a one-star program at the beginning of this one, and I'll start on the islands and build a powerhouse before I come to the SEC.
We had Matt Brown of the Extra Points newsletter. He's kind of been at the forefront of reporting on all this ever since the news of the game started trickling out a couple years ago, and he told us that it is much more immersive now with how you have to build your dynasties, where you can't take, say, a program like Hawaii from being a one-star program to suddenly the national championship in just 2 years. You actually have to invest a lot of time, which I'm very excited about. I get very immersed in these games, and I've spent a lot of time on NCAA 14 building dynasties and trying to win national championships and all that kind of stuff. So I'm looking forward to the new challenge this game is going to present.
Have you been practicing your fake press conference when you're sitting on the toilet in the morning?
Yeah, fake press conference, fake pitch to recruits where I'm outright lying to them about the playing time they're going to get or how I'm going to develop them within my program, even though I fully intend to sit them on the bench for the inevitable freshman five-star they're going to bring in to replace them.
Listen, I said this on Twitter when it came out that there is no NIL in the game, that it's going to be very hard to take Hawaii to the playoffs in year one, like I promised the good people of the islands. What's
really going to suck is when you get the notification that your five-star cornerback that's been committed to you for a long time has put out a notes app screenshot on his Twitter saying that he's opened up his recruitment and to respect his decision.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I have thought for years since I've been playing the NCAA 14 for the last 10 years that one thing that would have made the game so much better would be to do like the NBA 2K games did and just embrace a storyline with the dynasty mode. I think that is what has been missing. I'm very excited for the new edition.
Maybe that'll come in some later editions, but I'm just glad to have it back. And one thing you've been doing on your podcast here as of late is these top 5 lists of greatest players at respective positions that we never got to enjoy in the NCAA video games. Now, yes, we had like Johnny Manziel for a year in the last installment of the game at quarterback, but other guys, Lamar Jackson, the likes of that. Gosh.
Well, look, I pointed this out on the first video that we did, because the first one we did was the top 5 SEC running backs we never got to play with.
Yep.
There was no Alabama team where Derrick Henry was the featured back, but he was in the last game on the bench. So,
yes.
You can't say you didn't get to play with that.
That was when he wore number 27. That was before his breakout game against Oklahoma in that Sugar Bowl.
That's right.
So, yeah, he just made the cut on that game, but plenty of great talents that we never got to see. And one of the more recent lists you've done is defensive backs, and a familiar name to folks here in South Carolina and up there in Charlotte ended up making your list.
Yeah, that one will drop here in the next 10 minutes, probably right as you and I are finishing up. But at number 4 on our list of the top 5 SEC defensive backs we never got to play with is J.C. Horn. I mean, one of the things that always fascinated me about the college football video game, and you've heard a lot of people that do what we do for a living, Tyler, talk about the fact that this game helped them either better understand football, better understand the culture of college football. I think one thing that as I got older playing this game, because I was 11 when the very first one came out, is you start to understand the value of a dude that can break up passes. Like a DB does not have to be not valuable just because he didn't pull down the interception. And I think J.C. Horn would be one of the elites on the game at doing that if we had gotten, an NCAA 20 or an NCAA 21.
Yeah, no doubt. I think he would have been somewhere in that 94, 95, maybe even 96 category as far as ratings. Obviously ended up being a very high pick going to the draft, going to the Panthers, and I can't remember what year he was drafted, but definitely one of the better cornerbacks in all of college football at that point in time. And that's an interesting thing about what we've seen from the gameplay in the trailer of the new game is it seems that the defensive backs are actually going to be able to play the ball, play the receivers a little bit more realistically than we've seen in the past. And look, here's the thing about the game in the past, where if you just ran slants, you'd find somebody out in the open, and you could just nickel and dime down the field the entire way and never be stopped on defense. This one looks like it's going to be a little bit more challenging.
Well, and also going to be a little bit more forgiving, because whereas you could not play individually with a defensive back in coverage, if you were throwing those slants over the middle, every linebacker had like a 40-foot vertical and could knock down those passes. So it seems like that is something else that's been toned down. Yesterday's list was the top 5 SEC pass rushers. That includes both defensive line and linebackers. So we sort of talk about that a little bit. But coming up, we've already done running backs, pass rushers, defensive backs. Tomorrow we have wide receivers, and we cap it off on Friday with quarterbacks.
Well, if anybody wants to check out all these lists, how do they do that?
Look for SEC Unfiltered on YouTube, or find me at CFB Bubble Bath on TikTok, or at Dimitri Ravanos on Instagram.
Yes, for anybody that's not familiar, if you see a guy in a bubble bath talking about college football, that is indeed Dimitri. As I've seen that on my Instagram timeline quite a few times.
I do have to say this. If you see a guy in his bubble bath with no shirt on, you are on the right page. I am fully clothed, though, for all these videos.
I was going to say, I'm glad we're not getting the uncensored version of it. So there's that at least.
Well, thank you. You know how to make a boy feel pretty.
Well, when the game drops, we'll have to are you going to be on PlayStation or Xbox?
PlayStation, but did you see Online Dynasty now will go across platforms? Okay,
I did not see that. That is good, because I'm team PlayStation as well. But we'll have to get my Kennesaw State Dynasty and your Hawaii Rainbow Warriors Dynasty and go head-to-head at some point in time.
Very good. I've been telling everybody this that asks. I am happy to play with you individually online. I have no interest in an online dynasty. I don't want to wait for other people.
Yes, that is far too complicated. We'll just do a one-on-one head-to-head matchup and see who comes out on top. We'll get you in our tournament that we're trying to start here as well, and see if we can make that happen too.
Listen, anybody that would like to come and be humiliated, I welcome.
Sounds good. We'll check in with you again next week, Dimitri. Appreciate it.
All right, buddy. Good talking to you.
All right, Dimitri Ravanos joining me as he does each and every Wednesday here on the Extra Point of the Game. 1 hour in the books, another hour to go. We'll jump into more baseball, the conversation, as well as talk some football. Quarterback room. What does it look like from a national perspective? One insider on ESPN weighs in. That's all coming up next, hour number 2 of the Extra Point here on the Game. I mentioned that it is a great month to be at Twin Peaks, specifically the Twin Peaks down in the Vista. From June 8th through the 11th, that is at the end of this week, you can experience the Neon Bikini Costume Party. It's officially bikini season. If that's not enough reason to visit the lodge this weekend, epic deals on your favorite summer cocktails are also in session. Try a Tito's transfusion of Hennessy. Try a Tito's transfusion or Hennessy spicy mango lemonade to kick off your summer at the Neon Bikini Party. And don't forget about the Miss Twin Peaks live stream upcoming on June the 11th, as well as they will crown Miss Twin Peaks 2024. Reminder, once again, coming up on June the 14th is also National Bourbon Day as well. So many great things happening. You might want to just park yourself down at Twin Peaks for the entire month, because you're not going to want to miss any of these things with our friends at Twin Peaks down in the Vista. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head with you on this Wednesday as we are still awaiting to see what happens with South Carolina's head baseball coach vacancy as conversations ongoing. I'm sure interviews will be beginning shortly if they've not already begun with candidates to take the place of Mark Kingston after being relieved of his duties on Monday. Gamecock Larry has been patiently waiting on the Love Chevrolet phone lines all morning long. I'm sure he has some thoughts on this coaching search. Gamecock Larry, appreciate your patience this morning. What is on your mind today?
I want to make you mad, anybody else mad. But I sitting here listening to you talking about the Gamecock history, and the only Gamecock history that you and the guy from Tennessee and the guy from Maryland and all them, the only history that you know about the Gamecocks is what they were told and what you have read. And you came from places where you had money flowing, you could buy, get what you want. The Gamecocks, I do not believe we have that kind of money. But you say, go out and get a top-notch coach, one that's been to Omaha. Okay, we can get one of these guys, pay him $1.8, $2.5 million, bring him in. But we can get a complete coaching staff with what we've got and a few others. We got a man sitting on the bench right now that I'm telling you, he didn't get a fair shake at Clemson. Jack Leggett in the dugout sitting next to him. I'm telling you, we got the players and most of the fans want Monty Lee. And I'm an old Gamecock fan. And I would love to see Monty Lee. You could get Monty Lee for nothing. But instead of you're saying, go out and pay this guy from up there somewhere, $1.8 million, $2.4 million, bring him in, completely nothing, changed the Gamecock program worse than what this guy who just left. You put Monty Lee in there, you get a batting coach, hitting coach, and a few others, and a pitching coach, and you get these young men in there coming in, and I'll guarantee you, we will be in a super regional next year. Now, my guarantee don't mean nothing, but we will be in a super regional. You don't need to go out and hire this guy from up there in Maryland, this guy in Mississippi, this guy in Tennessee, this guy here. You got the man right here and on your bench, on your staff. And I told you this, I told them this 7 years ago when they hired Kingston. He will not last 5 years. Well, he come in the first year, he went to a super regional with Chad Holbrook players, Chad Holbrook recruits. And if they would have kept Chad Holbrook instead of firing him, they would have been in the College World Series that first year, I think, in Arkansas, because he took Holbrook players and went to Arkansas and missed Omaha by one game. But they done all that change. He changed completely from the Gamecock. He completely from the Gamecock history. Brought in this analytical stuff. And I told him he might last 5. What he did, he lasted 7, but a couple of years didn't count. And then, well, I had one other thing, but I done forgot. But let me see. That's about it. I can't think what it is, but I'm telling you, you got the man. Most of the fans want him. Most of the players want him. And I will definitely say there was something wrong with Kingston and that bench and that team the last couple of years. They played for themselves. They wasn't playing for the coach. and the coach wasn't for the players. That's all I got to say, and I love all y'all. I don't want to make you mad. I love you. I hope you put me back on when I get a chance. Go Gamecocks. Love all y'all.
All right. Appreciate it as always, Gamecock Larry. I will write down Gamecock Larry as somebody that is in the boat on wanting to hang on to Monty Lee and promote him to being the full-time head coach. And there are a lot of you out there that do feel that way, and I'm just gauging on what I've seen on social media, what I see on our Firehouse Subs text line each and every day, but I would not say it's the overwhelming majority. For as many people that I've seen saying, yes, let's keep Monty Lee, I've seen just as many people saying, please, no, let's go in another direction. So if anything, I'd say it's a split. And I get both sides of the argument because, and look, I know a lot of people here do think that he was not given as fair of a shake as he should have gotten in his time at Clemson, the whole Jack Leggett thing. Like, I get that. But at the same time, I still think you can't take that risk. Do I think he's a fine baseball coach? Sure. Could he come here and be overly successful? Absolutely. But I have not seen enough of a sure thing of him coaching at the Power 5 level to, in my opinion, justify him being the next guy. And Gamecock Larry brings up a really good point in terms of money, because that is, it's really easy to overlook the money aspect when it comes to hiring coaches because you get what you pay for at the end of the day. And if you want a good coach, you have to pay for him. Now, if money is a problem, then Monty Lee could be the way to go, because much like Coach Kingston, you could bring him in or you could promote him to being your full-time head coach and still have one of the lower coach salaries in all the SEC. And that has actually been a little bit of a trend when it comes to coaches that Ray Tanner has hired, where you have Shane Beamer, who, again, had not had any prior head coaching experience, so it makes sense, comes in as one of the lowest paid coaches in the SEC, wins a little bit, does get a little bit of a bump in pay. Same thing with Lamont Paris, who did take UT Chattanooga to an NCAA tournament, but still comes in as one of the lower paid coaches in the SEC, starts to win, gets that bump in pay as we thought he should have before the end of this past season. So if they're trying to keep things down towards the bottom when it comes to the payroll of the coach, then Monty Lee might be your option. But if you do want to go out there and get somebody that is a proven definitive winner that has taken teams to Omaha, you're going to have to get over that hump of 7 figures. You're going to have to pay somebody into the millions, 1.2 million, 5 million, whatever it may be, depending on, what coach you're talking to and what level of success they have. Like, again, it's a get what you pay for kind of thing. And I don't think you can take the chance of just trying to save a little bit by hiring somebody that's going to be cheaper. Like Josh Elander from Tennessee, again, is a name that comes up quite a bit. And again, could he go on and be a great head coach? He should, or he could, but I don't know if South Carolina is in the position to take that kind of risk again. Because again, with Holbrook, he was the Ray Tanner's assistant. He was right. He was the next in line. He was handed the keys to the kingdom and told, okay, go be successful with it. And he wasn't able to keep it at the same heights, which is why he got fired. And then Kingston comes in, again, as a mid-major coach that had been to the tournament, but didn't, I'd say, blow people away with what he was doing down there in South Florida, which, by the way, it's looking like he might actually end up back at South Florida again, funny enough. I just, again, to me, you can't take that risk. To me, you've tried that twice. To me, you got to go out there and get a proven winner. And here's the thing. That proven winner may not work out. You could go theoretically hire Don McDonald, and after all those trips to Omaha, the whole 9 yards up there in Louisville, and he could be under 500 after 3 years with no tournament appearances, and then you say, well, you know what? It didn't work. And then you're back to the drawing board of looking for a new head coach. But at least you tried. And that is worth something to me. Because if you were to, let's say, go the route of an Elander or a Monty Lee or something like that, and they fizzle out after 3 years, then you're still going to be left wondering what could have been if you would have gone out and hired that guy that did have prior success, that did have a track record of getting a program to Omaha, that did have all these accolades coming in that you could have hired. Yes, you would have had to pay more for him, but if you're in the same boat with an assistant or somebody that hasn't proven themselves, then why not take the risk? And again, there's no guarantee anybody's going to work out. The climate here at South Carolina, for whatever reason, may not work for everybody. I will disagree with Gamecock Larry. I do think you do have a good foundation of support when it comes to NIL, where you have a fan base that's passionate, that loves their baseball, that has enjoyed the highest of highs and has been frothing at the mouth, waiting for this program to get back to those days where if you bring in anybody that can stir up that excitement again, you're going to have the opportunity, at least with the way that NIL structure is right now and changes on the horizon, where, these players are going to be employees and all that kind of stuff, and that'll change when it comes. But we do have, that is important to note, with, this model that's supposed to be implemented in 2025, supposedly not until the fall of 2025. So we have a whole nother baseball season to go through with the current structure of NIL, where it is the people of the community, the people of the fan base that are responsible largely for this money that does go to the athletes to be able to bring in the caliber of talent that you want. So at least for 2025, you need somebody that's going to stir that excitement up, where people that are passionate about this program are willing to say, you know what? I believe in what he's doing. I think he can go out there and get these caliber of players. Let me give my $20 or $100 or a month or whatever it may be to the Garnet Trust and let it trickle down to that baseball program so that we can be successful again. Again, that model is going to change at some point in the future, but as of right now, that's what you have to do and you have to resonate with. And let me tell you, if you bring in somebody that you can point to and say, that guy has taken whatever school to Omaha 3, 4, 5 times, and he's going to do the same thing here, that's going to stir up excitement. I don't think if you bring in somebody without that proven track record, you're going to have the same results. And again, NIL is not the end-all be-all in all of this, but it is very important. And giving your fan base a reason to believe and a reason to be excited about your team is also very, very important. So, again, the ball's in the court of Ray Tanner and the Board of Trustees. And again, I'll reiterate what I said a little bit earlier. I know we put this all in the AD, but there's a lot of people involved in this process. It's not just Ray Tanner sitting there interviewing these people. It's not Ray Tanner putting his feet up on his desk and thumbing through resumes, deciding on who the head coach is going to be. There are a lot of people that have influence and power in this decision, and we got to hope they're going to make the right one. And look, no matter what hire you make, there are going to be people that love it. There are going to be people that hate it. But as long as it makes sense, as long as you can justify your hiring with proven track record and proven results, people will get used to it. If you hire somebody that's not done anything and not proven themselves, you're always going to have people that are going to be weary of them until they go out and prove something. So again, ball's in the court of Coach Tanner and all the people up there, in the offices that make these decisions. I just hope they make the right one. And we're going to be keeping an eye on this like a hawk until they do, and breaking down and scrutinizing every detail of it, because we all want this program to be successful. We all want this program to go back to being how it was 10, 12 years ago, 12, 15 years ago, really, when you're talking about it now, of being one of the most feared, being one of the best programs in all of college baseball. You're not that far away. Like I said, your climb back to the top is not Mount Everest. You know what I mean? Yeah, you've fallen down a couple rungs, but it's not impossible to get back there. You just need the right coach in place to do that. And hopefully that's who they hire. We'll talk some football coming up next. As I mentioned, David Hale of ESPN put out a very interesting list yesterday in ranking all 134 quarterback rooms. Where does South Carolina's fall? And what does it mean for this program going into the 2024 season? With that coming up next, it is the Extra Point. Reminder, Craft Beer Card is back. Go online to 1075thegame.com. Click on the Sweet Deals tab. You can purchase the Craft Beer Card. It's a $360 value, all yours for just $79. Again, on 1075thegame.com under the Sweet Deals tab. South Carolina's quarterback room, ranked on a tier list. Where does it fall? That's up next. Extra Point here on the game. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point here on the game. Tyler Head along with you. We will get back into the conversation around Monty Lee because that has struck a chord with a lot of people on both sides of the aisle on what South Carolina should do in regards to either keeping or moving on and hiring somebody else for their head coaching spot. We'll get to that here in a couple minutes. I'll get some of you on Love Chevrolet phone lines, so just hang on tightly for a couple more minutes there. I do, since I teased it, I got to pay off my teases. I do want to get into this conversation about South Carolina's quarterback room and where it ranks in all of college football going into the 2024 season. This is a very interesting year when it comes to quarterbacks in college football. We, of course, had big names that have now left college football, gone on to the NFL. Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, J.J. McCarthy, all those guys that went on to be, high picks in the NFL draft. And college football is always this never-ending cycle where you're going to have years where it's like, oh man, we lost so much great quarterback talent. What is the future of this sport going to look like for the next couple of years? And inevitably, a handful of guys step up and become that next upper echelon of great college quarterbacks that end up winning Heismans and getting drafted and all that kind of stuff. And it's just a never-ending cycle. So when you look at college football going into this year, you have notable names, Quinn Ewers, Carson Beck at Georgia, guys like that. Cam Ward, big names across college football that are expected to be in that upper tier of college quarterbacks in 2024. Some of them even past that, depending on how much eligibility they have, remaining. Particularly in the SEC, it's going to be a year of refreshing where roughly half the teams in the conference are going to be breaking in new quarterbacks, whether that be via a guy that stepped up from sitting on the bench past couple years or bringing in somebody from the transfer portal. So roughly half the league's going to look new at the quarterbacking spot this year. David Hale writes for ESPN, put out a story, or really a list yesterday, where he assessed all quarterback situations for every team in FBS. That is 134 teams at the FBS level, and ranked them into a tiered list based on how good or bad their situation is. So you start off with tier number 1, which is titled Cream of the Crop, which features quarterback rooms like Alabama's, Georgia's, Oregon's, and Texas's, where you have several good options, where you have one definitive guy that has already proven themselves at the quarterback spot, whether it be at that school or in Dylan Gabriel's case at a different school, that that guy is a bona fide star at that position. Then you have a backup that, by all intents and purposes, should be a pretty good option as well. Look at Georgia. Jaden Rashada coming over from Arizona State. Gunnar Stockton, highly touted guy that many people believe still has a shot to be a great quarterback in the SEC. Texas, you obviously have Arch Manning. Ty Simpson, a little less proven at Alabama, but still a good room overall there. And there's a reason why this is the top of the top, and these are all programs that are supposed to be in the mix for the college football playoff this year. It starts with how good their quarterback rooms are. When you transition down to the bottom of the list, and by the way, there are 20 tiers in this thing, so you got to go ways down to find yourself at the bottom. You get to tier number 20 with, hey, we could be wrong, which is in reference to quarterback situations like Buffalo's, Kennesaw State's, New Mexico and New Mexico State's, Temple's, those like that. David Hale, basically looks at this list as saying, we don't think they're going to be great, but maybe they'll go out there and prove us wrong, essentially. So not a lot of hope for guys that find themselves at the bottom of this list with their quarterback rooms, but maybe they'll jump up and surprise you. So it begs the question, as South Carolina is one of those programs in the SEC that is going to be breaking in a new quarterback this year, regardless of which way you slice it up. Where did he rank South Carolina on this tier list, and what category do they fall into? They fall into the category of tier number 14, which is the Devils you know. He describes the Devils as you know as this. Here's a scenario facing fans of these teams. Do you root for the guy who has played a few games and really looked good to win the job, or do you go for what's behind door number 2? On one hand, you could possibly do worse than Sorsby, who's the quarterback, one of the quarterbacks in the mix up at Cincinnati, Brendan Sorsby, Robbie Ashford, of course, here at South Carolina, or Ben Gulbranson out at Oregon State. On the other hand, you could do a whole lot better too. So when you're looking at this from South Carolina's perspective, you have the guy in Lenore Sellers, who is at this point unproven. Yes, he has looked very nice and very shiny in the couple of instances that we saw him in garbage time last year, throwing a touchdown, running for a touchdown, the whole 9 yards. And our hope and optimism is that he is going to live up to this potential that we built up for him these past 2 seasons. But we don't know that for sure. After that, your option is Robbie Ashford. I mean, yes, Davis Bevel's in the mix as well, and you have Dante Reno, but really the number 2 at this point in time seems to be Robbie Ashford, at least coming away from spring camp. And here's the thing. With Sellers being named the starter coming out of spring, as Beamer likes to put it, I don't expect anything to change between now and when the season kicks off against Old Dominion on August 31st. I don't see Lenore Sellers doing anything to lose that job. Once we actually get into playing the season, that becomes a different story because you actually have to go out there and perform. And I don't think he's going to have any problems performing against Old Dominion, but you jump into the thick of conference play right after that. Go on the road to Kentucky, you welcome in LSU in week number 3. Those could be opportunities to struggle. And look, I don't want Lenore Sellers to struggle. Knock on wood, I want him to go out there and live up to the hype, be the Heisman Trophy contender that everybody, some people out there say that he could be. But we don't know until we actually see it happen, until we see him with the reins of this program being able to guide it to the heights that we are optimistic that he's going to be able to lead them to. We're obviously going to have to see with that. If things go wrong, if you have Lenore Sellers go out there and throw a bunch of interceptions, or he's fumbling the ball, or he can't lead drives, or whatever it may be, you have to turn to, again, the devil that you know in a guy like Robbie Ashford and hope for better. But again, when you look at what his track record is at, a place like Auburn, where he started previously, really didn't give you a whole lot to be excited about. You know what I mean? And I know he came in here saying, well, I haven't been developed the way I wanted to, and I hope these guys can bring me along and all that kind of stuff. That's fine. I don't know what kind of leaps and bounds he's going to make at this point in his career. So, again, we are putting all of our eggs in Lenore Sellers' basket for a good reason because his upside potential is very high. His ceiling at this point in time, extremely high based on the talent that he brings to the table and what we know about him up to this point. Robbie Ashford's ceiling I don't think is that high. And theoretically, Ashford is your perfect backup because if, God forbid, Sellers got hurt, dinged up, whatever it may be, Ashford is the kind of guy that can come in and guide you along, can keep the train on the tracks theoretically for hopefully not too long while Lenore Sellers gets, healed up, rested up, or just puts his helmet back on after a play or whatever it may be. But he's not a long-term solution. Lenore Sellers is the only guy right now, and look, Dante Reno is going to come along. He's going to get developed and hopefully be the guy here in a couple of years. But as of right now, Lenore Sellers is the only guy that you can confidently say you have faith is going to be able to be a prolonged option at this quarterback spot. And if he goes down or if he doesn't end up working out, you're worried and you're concerned because you don't see a viable option after him. Again, falling to that devil you may know category of a guy like Robbie Ashford or Davis Bevel if you want to end up going that far. So again, it's all loops back around to I hope and we all hope Lenore Sellers is as good as advertised to where we're not having to have this conversation of, well, he's not working out. What's our next option going to be? You know what I mean? And again, you may think it's disrespectful to put Carolina's quarterback room this far down. But again, when you haven't proven yourself yet at the college level, you're not going to get a lot of high regard for the most part. Now, yes, guys like Jackson Arnold and stuff like that have actually started games like you did the ball game against Oklahoma are higher on this list. But you have the opportunity to improve. You have the opportunity to raise your stock in people's eyes from a national perspective by going out there and playing well. And I think Lenore Sellers is going to have the opportunity to do that. There are people out there that are listing him as dark horse Heisman candidates. I'm not going to jump on that train just yet, but I do hope that he goes out there and lives up to what we think he can be. So we're not having these conversations about, well, that didn't work. What's our next option going to be? So, again, David Hale of ESPN with that list out there. You can go see the full one and see where other schools fall across the country in regards to their quarterback situations going in to the 2024 season. Again, a lot of you want to weigh in on the minor league conversation and the head coaching search here at South Carolina. We'll get back to that coming up next. Get your thoughts from the Firehouse Subs text line as well as the Love Chevrolet phone lines. That is next. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you on your Wednesday on the game. Welcome back in. Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you here on the game on your Wednesday. Again, a lot of you weighing in on the Firehouse Subs text line about the conversation of hiring the next coach. And we did have somebody on the Love Chevrolet phone lines that did hang up. So if you want to call back, go right ahead, 803-404-6100, about, where Carolina goes from here. And the Monty Lee thing really has people very divided. And I'll go back to Gamecock Larry at the top of the hour where he said that he thought, the most of the fan base is in the boat of wanting Monty Lee to get the job. I would disagree with that because I feel like from what I've seen, and look, it doesn't represent everybody's opinion, but it seems like it's very close to a split where there are a lot of people, and look, I'm not doubting Monty Lee's ability as a coach. That's not what I'm here doing. I just don't think it's the right hire to make at this point in time because it is too risky. It does not have, I guess every coaching hire has the same upside potential, but it's not the same, I don't want to say guarantee. It doesn't offer the same amount of promise as some of these other options would based on what their previous track record has been. And again, every school's different. Every situation is different. So, some coaches may be a square peg in a round hole depending on what school they go to and how they use the resources allocated and the talent that they have and all that kind of stuff. But I don't know if I'm willing to take the risk on Monty Lee based on where this program is right now. And again, to reiterate, I'll go back if you missed it at the top of the 9 o'clock hour where I went back and combed through what every SEC program has done since South Carolina last made the College World Series back in 2012, which, of course, Ray Tanner's last year, where they were the runner-ups after winning the prior 2 national championships. Since then, 9 programs in the SEC have made at least 1 College World Series appearance. 8 programs have more or just as many super regional appearances as South Carolina. And the other 2 programs, Carolina's had 4 supers since then. The other 2 programs that have as many supers as South Carolina, that being Ole Miss and Tennessee, have both made it to the College World Series multiple times. Ole Miss winning the national championship. Tennessee, very good shot to make it back to a 3rd World Series this year, if not win the whole thing themselves. So in that instance, I would put those 2 teams ahead of South Carolina when it comes to that ranking, despite the fact that they have the same amount of super regional appearances. And then 7 more teams in the SEC have made more NCAA tournaments in that time since South Carolina has last been to Omaha. So again, when you average all these numbers out, South Carolina is in the bottom half of the SEC in all these categories of postseason success since then. Now again, is postseason success the absolute end-all, be-all? It's not, but it weighs pretty heavily. Yes, winning percentage and all that kind of stuff does matter. But at the end of the day, when people reflect on how good or bad your season was, they immediately look at the postseason. How far did you go? Did you host a regional? Did you make it to a super? Did you make it to Omaha? Like, those are the measuring sticks on what we base success of a program on. And ultimately, that is what is the reason why Coach Kingston's not the coach here anymore. Because he could not get you back to Omaha. He could barely get you to a super. Did it twice, but wasn't able to follow up on it. And you're doing your first year. And again, I wasn't here at this point in time, but I know the conversations being had around the South Carolina program was like, hey, we're back. Hey, we might be onto something here. That close to Omaha, oh, next year, the year after that, oh, we're definitely going. We are ready to kick that door down, and it didn't happen. And last year, where you had a great, very talented team that at times looked like maybe the best team in the entire country. Remember when LSU came to town last year? Yeah, that series. Where Ethan Petra goes yard on Paul Skeens? Yeah, that series. South Carolina legitimately looked like the best team in the country at that point in time. And you made it all the way to the Super. And you were 2 wins away from going to Omaha in 2 tightly contested games down there in Gainesville. But it was enough to give that hope, give the fan base that hope that, okay, we're back on the right track. Super this year, Omaha next year, at the very least, make it back to a super, right? If Carolina got through the Raleigh Regional this past weekend and was going to Athens for a super this upcoming weekend, the conversation's completely different. For one, they wouldn't have fired Kingston at this point in time. But two, I think even making a super might have been enough to save his job because you're still right in that same realm. You know what I mean? Now, going to Athens and beating that Georgia team that swept you a couple weeks ago is a very tall task. But I think making it to a super would have maybe been enough to keep him around a little bit longer. I don't know that for a fact. I'm just kind of spitballing here. But that didn't happen, obviously. You underperformed to where the expectations were. And, Kingston even said after the game on Sunday when asked him if this season was a disappointment, he said he didn't think so. And I think the entire fan base would disagree with that. So that's why we're in this boat. That's why we're having to make this decision on who that next guy is going to, going to be. Nameless Texter weighs in and says, please no Monty Lee. That's the most lazy hire no Clemson coach should ever coach at South Carolina, which is funny because I think a lot of people at Clemson would say no South Carolina coach should ever coach at Clemson. It's funny how those things kind of, flip-flop there. I don't want to say it's a lazy hire. I just think it's the easiest hire. If that's what South Carolina did want to do, it's the one that probably gives you the opportunity. That and Elander at Tennessee. It's probably the one that saves you the most money, to where you're not having to pay him as hefty a sum of salary as you would have to pay for some of these other more proven head coaches. And if that's the route you're trying to go, then that's probably your guy. But again, if you really care about this program getting back to where it was and being a threat for going to Omaha every single year and being talked about as one of those being talked about as one of the top half teams in the SEC again, because you're clearly not that right now, you got to pay for it. And it's going to cost you 1.2, 1.5, somewhere in that neighborhood to bring in that right coach to, to go to that next level. And again, I'm not saying that Monty Lee's a bad coach. And he did okay in his time in Clemson, got him to regionals. But to me, it's not a good enough track record to this point for me to take that risk on him being the South Carolina head coach, because I need somebody that has definitely proven themselves, that has definitively gotten teams to Omaha, that has definitively been a threat for a national championship. And unfortunately, I don't think Monty Lee's that guy. If you do, that's fine. I'm not telling you how to think. You are entitled to your own opinion. If you think Monty Lee is the person to lead this team to the great success and heights and all that kind of stuff, then that's fine. You are in your own right to believe that. And if they do hire Monty Lee and he goes out there and takes the team to a national championship, then I will gladly say that I was wrong about it. You know what I mean? But where I sit at this point in time, I just don't think it's the right way to go. And again, if you want to prove me wrong, that is totally cool with me. By all means, do it. But I don't know if that's your best option as of right now. And again, you guys fired up about this. That is totally fine. That shows your passion about this program and wanting it to be as good as it possibly can be. And we will see what Ray Tanner and the powers that be ultimately decide to do when that decision does happen. I'd imagine relatively soon. Again, we don't really have a timetable on this, and we don't know all the inner conversations that are being had as of right now in terms of who it's going to be. But I imagine we'll get news relatively soon. So we'll see what happens. Again, appreciate your passion. Appreciate you guys weighing in. Love the discourse. Love the back and forth. That's what these kind of programs are for. It's for us to have discussions. It's for us to, lay it all out there of the pros and cons of all these options, which Wes and I will do a little bit more at the top of the 11 o'clock hour to ultimately see who that best option is going to be, and we'll see what they ultimately decide to do. Come back, wrap up today's edition of The Extra Point. I wanted to bring this up because, Dave, you are our resident food aficionado, and I have a concoction that I think you might be interested in. With that coming up next, it is The Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you on your Wednesday on the game. Welcome back in. Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you here on the game on your Wednesday. Again, appreciate everybody checking us out on the Game TV, sponsored by our friends at Shepherd's Glass and powered by Integrated Media. Don't worry, the baseball conversation is not going anywhere. And when Wes Mitchell gets in here in a few minutes, we will open that back up and weigh the pros and cons of these theoretical candidates for this job, including Monty Lee. And again, that's been the conversation all morning long that you guys are very fired up about, that want to give your thoughts on one way or the other on if Monty Lee should be the head coach here at South Carolina or not. But Dave, I gotta bring this up to you. You are a resident food aficionado, is that correct?
Okay.
And you enjoy your sweets. We know about your affinity for honey buns, right?
Yeah, that's what they say.
I tried something for the first time this weekend at my nephew's 10th birthday party that I could not believe I'd never tried before or thought of in the past. It's called a Twinkie hot dog. Are you familiar with this?
No.
It is and this is my brother-in-law's mom made it. And when she brought it in and she told me what it was, I was like, that is the greatest thing that I've ever heard. It is a Twinkie that you put a full-size Twix bar inside of and cover with icing. So it looks like a hot dog covered with ketchup and mustard. The icing was like red and yellow, but is a Twinkie with a Twix and frosting on top of it.
That sounds pretty good.
Does that not sound amazing?
Yeah.
It was legitimately probably one of the sweetest things I've ever eaten in my life, and I probably couldn't have eaten more than one, but my goodness, was it good.
Wow. Well, I got a bottle of metformin in my bag. So,
Okay.
Yeah, I would have one right now.
You would have one right now?
Sure.
See, that's like, and I don't know if you can buy like frosting at the gas station, but get some frosting at the store, and then go to the gas station, get some Twinkies and a Twix. They're like 10 out of 10.
Yeah, 100%. That sounds fantastic.
And it's like, to me, I'm like, why did I not think of this as a child? Yeah. Why at no point in my life did I ever consider this combination?
Yeah, I mean, you think so many weird things as a kid, you just throw things together. But.
Exactly. I mean, you dip other candy bars in like peanut butter, and again, the frosting is very versatile to use in a variety of ways, but that one never crossed my mind. I'm funny about snack cakes. Like, we all ate them as a kid, or you'd get the Little Debbies and stuff like that. Some of those things I can't eat anymore. Like, I used to love fudge rounds. I could tear a pack of fudge rounds apart. I can't eat those anymore. It tastes too, like, waxy and artificial. Yeah. Same thing, like, and I know your love for honey buns. I can't do honey buns. I had a bad experience of eating too many at once as a kid. Now I can't even eat them anymore. But like Twinkies are one thing that I can still manage to eat, even though they are that artificial snack cake type of thing.
Yeah, the best thing I ever had as a kid, and I don't see them anymore, so I guess they don't make them, they were called Mickey cakes.
Okay. They
were chocolate with cream filling.
Okay.
And they were made by Merita Bakeries.
All right.
So I don't even know if they exist anymore.
That's an interesting question.
They are so good.
Like Mickey Mouse.
Yeah, Mickey, but it had a little boy's face on it. It didn't have, of course, Mickey Mouse on it, but they were so good. I haven't seen them in decades.
Well, when I search Mickey cakes, I'm getting actual birthday cakes of Mickey Mouse. So yeah. I can't confirm or deny if those kind of things are still around. But if you have the opportunity to try a Twinkie hot dog, I would absolutely recommend it.
I might try that just this evening.
I'm saying, when you do, let me know the result. Let me know what you think.
Okay.
Let me know the results.
So you said red and yellow.
Well, frosting's the same at the end of the day. It doesn't have to be, but for the festiveness of making it look like a hot dog, it was red and yellow. But you don't have, whatever frosting that you have.
What flavor would that be in the grocery aisle?
I don't know. I think it just tasted like regular, like, I guess, buttercream type of frosting. You're basically generic, but I mean, if you do whatever you want with it, chocolate frosting, strawberry frosting, vanilla frosting, whatever option you think fits best, because you have the complexity of the yellow sponge cake with the like white cream frosting in the Twinkie, but then you have the chocolate Twix, you got the cookie and the caramel inside of it. So you already have a lot of things going on. Like, do you want to lean more towards the chocolate side of things with more chocolate frosting, or do you want to go towards the vanilla, which is kind of already the cream inside the Twinkie anyway?
So the chocolate could be like chili.
You know what? There you go. A chili Twix Twinkie Dog.
Yes.
See, when I saw this, when I tried this, I immediately thought of you. I was like, this is, like, Dave would love this. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's what y'all think of me when you junk food. Dave, let's get Dave to try it out.
I didn't mean that in a demeaning way, so to speak. But if
like Bluto in the Animal House,
yeah. Well, you know what? Just
if the shoe fits,
try it and tell me what you think.
All right.
I'm genuinely interested in your assessment of what a Twinkie Dog is.
Culinary expertise.
So, and yes, you can find most of those components at your local gas station. If you want to give it a shot yourself, you might have to go to like Walmart for the frosting.
Yeah, probably so.
But so that was my adventure with a adventurous dessert at my nephew's 10th birthday on Saturday. Well, I also had some like strawberry shortcake, which my sister made, which is really good too. But I think the Twinkie cake kind of stole the show.
Yeah, definitely.
So, all right, we'll get back into the baseball conversation, what to do with this coaching hire and the Monty Lee conundrum that we are seeming to have this morning, as well as Wes Mitchell jumping here with me in the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. That is all coming up next here on your Wednesday as the sun is finally kind of poking its way back out as look over Gervais Street here on the game.
Our friends over at Integrated Media can help bring your home into the modern age, because when you choose Integrated Media to install your smart home systems or do anything that you need at your home or business from an audio-visual standpoint, they're going to help you be amazed by what your phone can do. Utilizing your smartphone, you can control your lights, your thermostat, your sound systems, TVs, security cameras, and your alarm. Again, all from the touch of a button. Go check out what they can do at integratedmediainc.com. They've got reviews there for you. They have a lot all about their services. Again, security and cameras, TV installations, audio, video, home theater, and complete smart home solutions where you can control everything in your home from the touch of a button. 803-948-8327 or go to their website, integratedmediainc.com. Michael, Nathan, their team, I can personally attest to the fact they're awesome. They've been to my home, integratedmediainc.com.
11 o'clock on your Wednesday. Welcome in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head, Wes Mitchell, along with you for another day here as Chris Clark is taking this week off. Funny enough, he's surely missing all the fun. He's got a lot to catch up on when he comes back from his vacation.
Yeah, I don't know if he's taking an actual vacation though. To be honest with you, I'd love to rib him. He is at the coast, but
he's got the phone in one hand.
He's been dialed in, honestly. So I actually talked to Chris on the phone on the way over here. So he's getting a semi-vacation. Like he's getting to do some work, then go enjoy some vacation, then dial back in a little bit.
When was the last time you have actually legitimately been able to like disconnect from this job for a period of time?
I definitely did on my honeymoon. That would have been two Decembers ago, I guess. No, I did last summer. When I take my vacation though, I take my vacation. Like it's like
that's healthy. You need to do that.
Yeah, I'm like, you know what? And I'll be honest, finding the work-life balance in the married life is like it's
challenging.
It is challenging. That's the key to it all, though, I think. So certainly on vacation, I'm like, all right, gotta stay off my. The funny thing is, though, if something big's like when I was on my honeymoon, South Carolina was in the process of hiring a new offensive coordinator. So I was like still getting texts about it, and I was like reading our coverage. I'm like, she's like, why are you looking at that? I'm like, I want to know who they're gonna hire.
Yeah, I don't have the insight.
Yeah, like I'm at this point, I'm just curious, like anybody else.
That's interesting. Well, hopefully Chris is getting some nice reprieve this week, and he'll have plenty of thoughts when he comes back in next week. Well, we may know who the head coach is by that point in time. It will have been a week since Kingston's fired come Monday, and we're now in day 3, and we kind of know the list of candidates, but we don't really know what the timetable of making that hire is going to be. And as we've talked about, you want to be quick with it, obviously, because the portal stuff's going on. You want to be able to start putting together your team for next year, but you also want to make sure you are meticulous and making sure you're really vetting these guys and making at the end of the day, the best hire for this program.
For sure, man. And I think, like you said, you got to be efficient to an extent, because every moment that ticks by, and this is a dramatic interpretation, but it is true. Every moment that ticks by is a moment some other school, some other team is hitting up people in the transfer portal. And, I think, and say what you want. It's going to be, I'm sure we're going to hear more reactions. Polarizing is definitely the right word.
Yep.
About whether or not Monty Lee should be a major candidate for the job or not. And it's truly, as you were telling me before we came in, it's truly like people are for it or against it, with very little just sort of in between. Kind of like politics right now, it seems like. So I think when you look at the way things have played out to this point, though, there is a reason South Carolina hired or stuck with an interim coach, and that they made it Monty Lee.
Right.
And I got some reactions when South Carolina put out that release, and I tweeted out, hey, it's official, Monty Lee is the interim coach. There was even a reaction or two that was like, Ray Tanner should have cleaned house. And I disagree with that completely, because guess what? The portal is open for business, which means other schools are already potentially trying to build their rosters right now.
Mm-hmm.
And these guys that played for this coaching staff this past season could have already entered the portal, and they have not.
Sure.
So, I think there's a reason that you name an interim. There's a reason, whether Monty Lee is the next guy or not, he has a job to do right now, and that was to complete the exit interviews with the guys.
Yep.
And to maintain contact with the current players, to maintain contact with recruits. They've even added a commit or two as well. So his job is to go business as usual as much as you can right now, and it appears that's what he's doing. So that's why you don't clean house, because whether it is a brand new coach or whether, it is Monty Lee, you want for the transition to be as smooth as possible to the next guy. And in today's modern college athletics, that's just how you have to do it, I think. And so I'll say this, Monty Lee has acted as if he is the head coach, which from your interim standpoint, you want a guy who can step in and command the room and keep everything together. And whether it's him or somebody else, frankly, it's going to be much easier on the next guy that it hasn't just been mass chaos with guys already leaving.
Absolutely. And again, Monty Lee has a long history of being a head coach at College of Charleston, obviously Clemson, before he came back to South Carolina to be an assistant. So that transition from being an assistant to being the interim head coach, not all that hard for him. And again, doing a good job of keeping things in place as of right now, where if you did clean house and you're just telling everybody else around the country, like, hey, come pick apart our roster. It's free reign right now. We're trying to figure out what the staff's going to be. So I understand it from that standpoint. The conversation we've been having all morning about the Lee thing, and look, Lee, again, has coached at the Power 5 level, has taken Clemson to regionals, didn't go past that, and I'm not saying that he couldn't be a great head coach here at South Carolina. Any of these guys could be great. Any of these guys could be terrible. You don't know until they actually get in here and do this, but my standpoint on this, and again, everybody's entitled to their opinion, my standpoint is I don't think you can take a risk. I think if you have the opportunity to hire somebody that is nobody's a sure thing, but somebody that has a proven track record of taking teams to Omaha, having deep runs in the postseason with Power 5 programs or whatever it may be close to that, then I think you have to go with that as opposed to somebody that, again, has a lot of head coaching experience, but has never taken a program quite to where you want to take this program.
Yeah, and I think that's a valid thought. It's a valid side of this thing. And, I think at some point, it also goes back to, do you just want a completely clean slate? Like, do you just want to start over in terms of you draw a line in the sand and you say there may be some short-term repercussions to this. Not maybe, there will be. But for the betterment long-term of the program, you just feel like you need fresh blood. That is certain. I think that's kind of the argument for the people that are like, I don't want Monty Lee.
Right.
And I think that's valid. I think there are some valid reasons to think that Monty Lee would win here as well, particularly if, he is able to put together the staff that you're going to need to win. And there's a lot of people. And this, I don't know, is this a fan creation that Landon Powell would join the staff as an assistant? I've seen people also say, well, hey, keep Monty Lee on as an assistant, but bring in a new coach.
Right.
And I can say this. This is opinion, but it's opinion based on some facts. I don't think that second one is happening. If you get a new coach, I don't think you can expect Monty Lee to stay on as an assistant. He's already been heavily connected to the Citadel job. If you have the itch to be a head coach, which he absolutely does, then I don't think you can expect for that part to happen.
And you would have better insight on this than most of us. How much are they willing to pay for a coach? Because that's an important question to ask. Kingston was towards the bottom of the SEC when it came to his salary. Monty Lee, when he was at Clemson, was making about the same money that Kingston was making here. So if you did hire him, you wouldn't have to shell out the $1.2 or $1.5 million that you might for some of these other coaches. That is an important thing to remember here, is how much are they willing to pay for whoever this next head coach is going to be.
Yeah, and I think you always hear, and we've heard this on this one as well, that they're willing to pay what it takes. And I think. Now you're going to pay market value for what a coach is worth. Like you're not going to pay a Mark Kingston, especially rewind to 7 years ago.
Yeah.
You're not going to pay him $1 million just to be like, hey, we paid him $1 million. You're going to pay him what it takes to get him if that's your guy. So
sure.
I think I wouldn't imagine that it would be completely like if the ECU coach is like, hey, I'm in, but this is what it's going to take, I think South Carolina is willing to do what it takes.
Or they should be.
Yes, I think they are. It's just a matter of not every candidate is going to command that. Now, you look at Dan McDonnell at Louisville. This is a guy, say what you want about whether he's the right answer or not. He has a rolling high dollar contract at Louisville. And this thing it is essentially a lifetime contract. Like it just automatically rolls over. Now they on the Louisville side, and I think they have a new AD. They may be saying, "Hey, we're stuck in a lifetime contract at this point."
Mm-hmm.
He hasn't made the dance 3 out of the last 4 seasons, so it's a little bit easier to maybe get him out of that contract potentially than it would have been, let's say 3 years ago. Maybe so, but still, he ain't taking a pay cut. So
right.
If a guy is already making big money, or if if you're Godwin, it's a situation where you've been approached by multiple SEC teams over the years and turned them down, obviously, every step of the way. So I think certain coaches, it is going to take a certain commitment, both on the upfront dollar commitment and the NIL side in terms of this is what you think you're going to be able to promise for the NIL resources for the new coach as well.
And again, there's a lot of names on this list, and we don't know who's had the conversations, who's being brought in for reviews or anything at this point in time. We assume those details will be coming out soon.
And Tyler, real quick, we don't know. Are there some names that just haven't been mentioned? Like, let's not pretend we have the list that is in Ray Tanner's pocket. There's always, in every coaching search I've ever been a part of.
Right.
Now, does it actually play out to where that guy ends up being the coach? 9 times out of 10, no. But there's always some coach that is sitting at a place as the head coach and just quietly is unhappy.
Yeah.
And they reach out and they say, "Hey, I'd like to talk."
When Chad Holbrook got fired, was Kingston on the original list that everybody put out on who could be the next guy?
No.
No? Okay.
No.
Interesting to note.
So, yeah, take that for what you will. But, yes, he was not.
Well, we'll look at the names that we do know at this point in time and weigh some pros and cons on those and see what kind of fit they might be for South Carolina. Coming up next is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs on your Wednesday on the game.
All right, guys, almost lunchtime. That means it is time to hit up our friends at Firehouse Subs with convenient locations throughout the Midlands. No matter where you are right now, if you're listening to us, chances are there's a Firehouse Subs near you. Here's what you need to do. Download the Firehouse Subs app. I know most of you already have, but head on over to the Firehouse Subs app. Click the location, and it's going to find you one that is very, very close to you. And then you can do the rapid rescue to go avoid the wait, order online. It's going to be waiting for you right on the shelf when you walk in. I know, we're talking about coaching searches and being efficient. Why not be efficient with ordering your lunch so that you can enjoy the rest of your time off for your lunch? Best way to do that right now as we hit lunchtime is Firehouse Subs. FirehouseSubs.com, Firehouse Subs app. And even better, you're going to get points for every single time you order, and then you can trade those points in for free food. Who doesn't love free food? We do. We love free food, and we love Firehouse Subs.
Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyrod West Mitchell along with you on this Wednesday, continuing to break things down for South Carolina's coaching search to find Mark Kingston's replacement. And you've seen the list out there from Gamecock Central, from places like D1 Baseball, a lot of similar names popping up on all these lists on guys that South Carolina is potentially looking at to be their next head coach. One name that I've seen pop up on a couple lists, I know it wasn't on yours the other day, but I feel like we could probably squash this one, is Kevin O'Sullivan down at Florida. And I get it, the prior connection. He almost became the coach several years ago before going and winning the World Series. I don't see that one happening personally.
Yeah, no, I think you'd be shocked there. And, it was dude, 7 years in college athletics.
Mm-hmm.
That feels like
a lifetime.
Yeah, it feels like 3 decades ago because of and everything that's changed since then. But also that was actually right before he broke through and won a national title.
Yeah, well, that's the reason why he stayed at Florida, because, he won the national title.
Yeah, you're not going to leave after winning a title. And at the time, he was not getting the support he felt that he needed and wanted at Florida. And so, again, that would be a guy where on the surface at the time, you might have been like, well, Sully's not leaving Florida to go to South Carolina. But behind the scenes, there were reasons why he may be looking for a fresh start. I look, as you go through these names, Tyler, I look at, let's say, a Dan O'Donnell. I look at that kind of like a Calipari in basketball.
Mm-hmm.
Has it run its course at his current job? And we don't know if is Calipari going to win at Arkansas or not. We'll all find out. But has he – he's already started taking transfers there. So would it take an adjustment? Would it take him being willing to change his approach on some things? Yes. Louisville, I think they already have a guy or multiple guys going in the transfer portal. So is that place just a mess right now? I don't know. Has the game – it's kind of like some people will say, oh, the game has passed this guy by. Other people will say, oh, he just needs a fresh start, and he doesn't get the support he needs at Louisville. I know one thing. He built them into a national freaking power.
Yes.
Like 5 College World Series trips, I'm pretty sure, at Louisville. At one point, it actually looked kind of like what Ray Tanner was doing here in terms of NCAA tournament. At one point, they were going to the NCAA tournament pretty much like every single year.
Right.
And I think if you're a South Carolina fan, especially in today's SEC, you want somebody who can bring that consistency.
Yes, the hang up with McDonald is he does not seem to be too keen on NIL.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Louisville, I don't know what their NIL situation is, but we know the support that you have here at South Carolina from the fan base, from the community. If you need NIL money for baseball, you will get a good amount of it. Like, I don't think that'll be a concern here. Maybe it's the approach that he just didn't have the resources he wanted there, and that's why he isn't as into it. So if you come here and say, hey, you're going to have X amount of dollars to do what you need to do and get the talent that you want, maybe he has a different approach.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of that's the question that none of us here know the answer to. Is it that he just did? Now, I can speak to football a little bit. The Louisville NIL support in football is actually surprisingly good. Like, they do very well in the transfer portal, which, as we know, whether it officially can or cannot be a part of it, NIL and the transfer portal go hand in hand. So Louisville baseball, is it more so he's not going that route, or is it like you're saying that just they don't put those resources behind baseball? Now, I think if it's that they don't put those resources, but he understands, hey, I need this, for one, that's another reason for him to leave.
Sure.
2, that means if he had the support, he would use it. And I think you need a baseball coach that is going to be willing to ask for the dollars. And some of NIL is, yes, as much as you can with whatever the rules are at that particular time. We know they change and shift on a day-to-day basis, it seems like. I don't know if you can specifically will be able to allocate resources and stuff when this sort of all settles or not, but kind of knowing how to manage your roster from an NIL standpoint is going to be part of it. But more importantly, for example, you look at Garnet Trust for basketball, for men's basketball, there's the 1K Club, and it is a specific fund just for men's basketball. And so I think the new baseball coach is going to have to be heavily involved on the NIL front and willing to put their time and effort and energy into what does that look like? You know, do you have a diamond club, dugout club, baseball club, whatever it is? And this coach is going to have to be willing to, I think, have meetings, have breakfasts, have dinners, however you want to do it with this select group of individuals who are supporting your baseball program from a high dollar NIL standpoint. So some of it is just going to be a willingness to fundraise, essentially, right, and shake hands and kiss babies and do all that stuff with your best supporters financially. Right. And so, you know, I'm speaking out of turn here, but I would look for something. I think you have to do something like that, a baseball-focused approach. You know, I think there's been that to an extent, but with a new coach, maybe they come in with some ideas to reshape that. If I'm Ray Tanner, if I'm the administration and I'm interviewing coaches, I want to know, what is your approach to NIL and the transfer portal? And I don't want to just hear, oh, yeah, I know NIL is part of it. I want to hear what your plan is to building support. Because I think I may be in the minority talking to some high school baseball coaches. If you hired a guy like Monty Lee, you automatically are actually going to get support from the high school baseball community for that hire. Sure. But you also, look at how polarizing the responses are. You, in this day and age, are going to need fan support with their purses. So part of the new hire is it has to re-energize the fan base to give to NIL, and then in order to then get good players. Yeah, it's a balance. And another name that's on the list, you brought him up a little bit earlier, is Cliff Godwin up the road in Greenville at East Carolina. Of course, they just got bounced from their own regional this past weekend by the a Cinderella story that is Evansville this year. He's somebody that has made multiple trips in the NCAA tournament, 3 trips to Supers, has not made it to the College World Series as of yet, but perennially has ECU as one of the teams you talk about every year when you go into the tournament. He really has it made up there. Now, he, from the standpoint of NIL, you know, is interesting because I know for the fact that they're not going to have the same resources of NIL like you would have here. So if he comes down to South Carolina with a full budget of NIL, what can you do with going out there and getting good players? Well, I know he's a good coach. What can you do with that elite talent at a place like South Carolina to maybe get them to that next level? I don't know. My question is, would you be able to even pry him away from East Carolina? It's his alma mater, has it made, he's had a lot of success there so far. Like, I don't know if he wants to leave. Yeah, and I think, you know, like I said earlier, he's had multiple opportunities. Like, this is a guy, you know, I think LSU wanted, I think Mississippi State wanted, maybe Tennessee kicked the tires too. I think that's true. I don't know for sure on that. But whenever any big job has come open, frankly, his name pops up. Right. And it's just been that, and you have to respect this, he's loyal to ECU, and he's far more loyal than most coaches ever are. Sure. I feel like. So you got to respect that. You know, is this the time for him to make a move? How many more SEC jobs come open at some point? You know, I don't know. Obviously, everybody has like a window, basically. Does he at some point feel like his window is closing? And if so, is South Carolina the job for him? Is that the one you jump at? It to me is as close to, like, if he talks to Ray Tanner, he's like, I think it's time. Mm-hmm. I don't think it would get past him. And I'm not saying that in speaking for Ray Tanner. I'm just saying that in general, doesn't it seem like he could check every single box except for the biggest box, is he willing to leave? So yeah, if he were willing to leave, I mean, because baseball, honestly, baseball is a consistency game. Mm-hmm. We like to look at it, you know, did you win the big thing? How many trips to Omaha, et cetera, et cetera. There's far more luck in baseball than anybody ever likes to admit. There is. In baseball, if you consistently do it the right way and consistently compete for whatever your goal is, you just hope the so-called baseball gods will reward you that seeing eye single finds the outfield grass versus getting knocked down by the shortstop. You know, so that to me is what, if you're South Carolina, you want the guy, like, has he been to Omaha yet? No. But has he consistently put ECU in a position to compete for it? Absolutely. So, you know, with bigger resources on a bigger platform, he obviously has an understanding of the Carolinas from a footprint standpoint. So, I mean, there's no sure things, but he feels like the guy that would be as close to it as you could possibly get.
Absolutely. And again, they've been eliminated, so he can have those conversations now, and I don't know if he has or not, but we'll see what ends up happening.
Yeah, and I think, you know, I was looking through yesterday, Tyler, pretty much everybody that we think Ray Tanner would want to talk to is available at this point. And, you know, if they go the assistant route, then, you know, Tennessee is obviously still playing, but Tennessee, it's way easier to interview an assistant when a team is still playing versus interviewing it's almost like kind of a bad precedent to put that on a coach if it's a head coach and they're about to play for a super. So a lot of that would take place, I think, with an agent. Whereas right now, all the head coaches that we think they're going to talk to are available to talk.
Well, this conversation is not going away, and we'll continue to follow it as the week goes along until they ultimately make a hire, and then we'll break that down when that does indeed happen. But we'll switch gears to football coming up next. ESPN has released their FPI for 2024. Where does South Carolina rank, and what's the projected win totals for the Gamecocks this fall? Hit that coming up next. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs here on The Game.
All right, friends, let me tell you about our friends at Classic Roofing, classicroofingsc.com, 803-590-7870. As you know, there's lots of storms that have been hitting the area, which can lead to roof damage. Let our friends at Classic Roofing check your roof before filing a claim. You may not need to, and you don't want to file one for no reason. Some people may tell you, hey, just file it, let them handle it. That's not in the long term going to be your best plan. So let our friends at Classic Roofing give you an honest assessment of where your roof is and what changes or what fixes might need to take place. 803-590-7870, classicroofingsc.com. If you go on there or call them, you can set up that free estimate. Our friends at Classic Roofing, it's a culmination of over a decade of dedicated service in the roofing game. Let them take care of you just like they did me. Again, 803-590-7870.
Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head, Wes Mitchell along with you here on your Wednesday. Jump into the football conversation as we enter the long summer of list, rankings, projections, and all those things until we get to
season,
kickoff on August 31st. And yes, indeed, ESPN did release their FPI earlier on this week. And for those that are not familiar, this is a metric that has a lot of data points that go into it, returning production, basically your wins and losses from a season ago, what your schedule looks like, that spit out these numbers that give you a projection of where your team should end up this upcoming season. One thing to note, this does not account for transfer talent. So
it doesn't?
I learned this the other day. Adam Rittenberg was on Paul Feinbaum and was asked the question of why Ole Miss was at 16. And he said, well, it doesn't account for the transfer talent coming in for whatever reason. So that can skew these numbers a little bit for some of these teams that went really heavy into the portal. And that's a good thing to bring up because South Carolina has brought in a lot of portal talent this offseason. In fact, I can give you the Dave. Can we find cut number? Where is it from yesterday? Cut number 7 from yesterday's list. This is Adam Rittenberg. Talk about Ole Miss, but kind of explaining why the numbers are the way that they are.
Right, and part of that is that so much of Ole Miss's roster construction is through the transfer portal and not through the kind of traditional high school recruiting means. I mean, you just look at who they added, last year in last year's portal, in this year's portal, on both sides of the ball, and I mean they've done remarkable work. I mean, other than Ohio State, I don't know if there's a team that had a more a splashier performance in the transfer portal than Ole Miss did, going all the way through the spring and even picking up some players that I think can help them in recent weeks. But I just don't think they're getting as much credit from an FPI's perspective because a lot of those players didn't come through the traditional high school means. I still think it's a heck of a team who had a great season last year, and now with the expectations of, hey, can you make the playoff? You have enough on both sides of the ball. You've got the quarterback. You've got a head coach in Lane Kiffin who's been there for a while. Can they make that jump? It's going to be fascinating to see, but FPI is certainly not as high on them as some of these other teams.
So that, again, is talking about Ole Miss, and that's an interesting thing to note, which I don't know why it's not weighted more heavily with transfer portal now that we know that's the landscape of college football, but it does reward you better for your traditional means of recruiting from the high school ranks, which, again, South Carolina's done a good job of, but they've also brought in a lot of good portal talent this offseason as well.
Yeah, if we were online right now, I'd be searching for side-eye meme to post. How does the FPI not include the transfer portal?
I don't know. I don't know if it doesn't include it specifically, but it's not weighted as heavily as it probably should be.
To me, but didn't he just say it doesn't include it?
In a way of speaking, I don't know if it outright doesn't include it, but it's not as big of a factor as traditional high school recruiting seems to be.
I mean, to me, you can just throw the numbers in the trash at this point. But and the FPI adjusts so much as the year progresses and as as game. And matter of fact, I'm having trouble. I love the thing where it tells you what they think the percent is of a team winning a particular game based on FPI. I'm struggling to even find that on ESPN's website right now.
Yeah, that may not be out yet.
But essentially, they have South Carolina going right at dead even.
Dead on the money.
6.
6-6, which, if I remember correctly, I think they had them at 5-7 a year ago, right?
That feels right.
Yeah.
Prior to the season.
That obviously ended up being right. Now, 6-6 gets you back to a bowl game, which, again, that's at least a step back in the right direction compared to where you were a season ago. Not what a fan base wants to hear, like, hey, we're going to go 6-6 this year, but you'd at least be trending back to where you were a couple of seasons ago.
Well, and I feel like if you're 6-6, you're probably always maybe a drive or two away from either being 5-7 or 7-5.
Right.
And somebody told me once that a guy that played at Carolina and then went on to be a coach, he's like, man, you don't realize how many of these games come down to one quarter of play or even just a handful of plays. And even a game that doesn't necessarily seem like it was that close, if a couple of those plays are, a pick six or a block punt or something like that, then, your chances of winning obviously get skewed heavily. And so, I think if you're right at 6-6, you're going to have some games that come down to those final plays that are going to determine whether you are on the good side of this or the bad side of this. And looking this is almost it feels like a tired thing to talk about because we talk about it every year. But South Carolina and Kentucky, SEC opener, road game, will be Lenore Sellers. We assume Lenore Sellers' first SEC start.
Yep.
And
also Brock Vandegrift's.
Guess what? You look at this thing. The FPI actual number for South Carolina is 6.2.
Mm-hmm.
That's not win-loss or anything like that. That's just their number. For Kentucky, 6.2. I don't know what the tiebreaker was, but they have South Carolina. That puts South Carolina 33rd in the country, Kentucky 34th. And both teams have a projected 6.0 and 6.0 record. So who wins that game, at least looking at this, may be the difference in either who gets to that or who exceeds that, depending on the other games.
And we've talked about that being one of the make-or-break games this entire season, right out the gate there in week number 2, because that is one Carolina fans feel like they should win and Kentucky fans feel like they should win. So something's got to give on both sides, and we'll see what way it goes. With that game being in week number 2, that is, of course, start of conference play. For once, South Carolina doesn't seem to have the toughest schedule, at least as of right now. Based on the FPI, they rank South Carolina's schedule at 17th overall. They give it the hardest to Florida, which is no surprise. We've talked about that schedule plenty, but I feel like we usually see South Carolina somewhere in that top 3 to 4, and at least for now, that they're not there.
That's a little bit mind-blowing to me that their 16 schedule's more difficult than this one.
When you have LSU, Alabama, Ole Miss, Oklahoma, obviously Clemson as well. That's tough.
How are there 16 that are more difficult? I don't know. Obviously, Florida, that schedule is being talked about as maybe some people are saying it might be the most difficult schedule in college football history.
And that's not just conference. They've got UCF, Miami, and Florida State out of conference. They're trying to win the state championship. They may not win any of those games.
Meanwhile, they have a coach who is on the hot seat and being sued by a player.
Former player that's now at a rival school.
If that ain't the most 2024 sentence you ever heard in college football, I don't know what is. But, yeah, you look at this thing. The unfortunate thing for South Carolina is among the SEC schools that you're going to play, the only two that have, we just talked about, Kentucky is right behind you, even though they have the same sort of FPI power ranking, I guess you'd say. And then, of course, Vanderbilt is far lower than you.
Yep.
I think they're 76th in the entire country. But otherwise, all the other SEC schools you're playing are significantly higher than you on this FPI ranking, which, again, doesn't really mean a ton.
Right.
But it at least means something in terms of the overall talent and expectations.
And for what it's worth, Clemson also ahead of South Carolina, so all but one of their Power 5 opponents ahead of them in the FPI.
So that's tough.
It is tough. And again, these are projections and numbers based on simulations at this point in time. Still got to play football and see how things play out this fall, but this is always a good metric to kind of look at as we look at things for the upcoming season. Before we head into this break, before I forget,
Josh is blowing us up.
Josh is blowing us up.
We got some tickets.
We have 2 family 4-pack of tickets to go see the Fireflies take on Fayetteville on Friday night, 7:05 first pitch. Callers number 4 and 5 right now, 803-404-6100. Each win yourself, again, a family 4-pack of tickets. See the Fireflies take on Fayetteville coming up Friday out at Segra Park. We'll come back as Dave takes the calls on that and wrap up today's edition of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. It is a very big day for one Nick Harbor. We'll tell you why coming up next. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour here on the Game.
All right, friends, I know many of you have a graduate in your family, whether that's high school or college. Why not give them the gift of an awesome framed diploma from Gold Line Framing? Hit up our friends at Gold Line Framing, 803-739-1337. They've been in business for over 20 years. They're over at 511 12th Street. If you want to just head on over there and check out what they have in store, there's an art gallery, home decor, furniture, and gift items, all for you to check out. Also, they can pretty much custom frame up anything you can think of. Like I said, diplomas, of course, but also original artwork, canvases, jerseys, flags, signed prints, whatever it is and whatever you want for that custom frame. Owner Kendall Walsh, manager Johnny James, they're going to take outstanding care of you. Call them today. Actually, call them right now, 803-739-1337. Again, that's Gold Line Framing, 803-739-1337.
Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head and Wes Mitchell along with you for a few more minutes here on this Wednesday. Very important day when it comes to track and field events out at the NCAA Outdoor Championships. And funny enough, Eugene, Oregon, many athletes for the Gamecocks, including Nick Harbor, going to be running for the NCAA Championships.
Yeah, the place that finished number 2 for Nick Harbor.
Think there may be some salty people out there?
Yeah, ironically there. And so you can actually watch this tonight if you want. You're going to have to do some math on when it's going to happen. But 5:46 Pacific time, 8:46 Eastern is when it appears Harbor's first event, preliminary, will be. I'm going to be honest with all y'all. I don't know a whole heck of a lot about how all this works at the national level, but I can tell you this. Harbor and some other Gamecocks are in the running, and these are going to be on ESPN2 tonight with Saturday's final on ESPN. Mike Yuva has put together a great guide on Gamecock Central. It is free on when the various events are and how you can watch. And, of course, all wishing Nick Harbor very, very well as he does, I believe, the 100 and the 200 out there.
Yes, and it's important to note, and Yuva has this in his story as well, that his time for the 200 to qualify him for the NCAAs was also good enough to earn him a qualifying spot for the Olympic trials as well. Now his time for the 100 was just a little bit off. He ran a 10:11 to qualify for the Olympics. The Olympic trials, excuse me. You have to have a 10.05, so not that far off. Very, very close, which he could indeed do at the NCAAs this weekend or this week. That's fast.
I mean, that's insane. But yeah, so it is funny with track how much faster these guys and girls sometimes get when they're being pushed to be faster.
Sure.
You know, and so I'll be curious. I guess it would stand to reason that this trip out there will be his last opportunity before the Olympic trials to try and hit that number.
Yep.
And so we'll see if he can do so. And, man, that's just blazing. I remember going back to when South Carolina signed Troy Williamson, who was one of the first, I would say, in like modern recruiting, one of the first true like speedsters I remember following that signed with South Carolina. And he was a 10-3 guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember 10-3 kind of being the standard of like, this is hauling.
Right.
But for Harbor to even be close to that, you said 10.05?
10.05 is an automatic for
qualifier for Olympic trials.
Yes.
Jeez. Yeah, that's rolling.
Which, by the way, 10.3 wouldn't.
No, I mean.
That's not even close now.
Yeah, and you're talking, if you run a 10.3 and you're a wide receiver and you can catch, you can do all the other things, that's still blazing. Don't get me wrong. Like, you are hauling.
Right.
But this is obviously different. This is pure speed. And, man, that's also – I wish him very, very well. It'd be awesome. Even to get to just go to the Olympic trials is special.
And again, that was his aspiration coming to South Carolina, and that's why they worked out this deal with track. Like, hey, he's a football player, but he's also a track guy. And, unlike some schools that may offer you the opportunity to do both, that eventually say, well, why don't you quit that silly track thing? Let's focus on football. Like, no, Coach Beamer is allowing him to do this, and obviously we want to see him be successful. Now there's the trade-off that if he does go to the Olympics, you're not getting him until, the middle of August at the earliest, and that certainly hurts you as far as development goes. But that's I'd say a risk you're willing to take if he's able to go to the Olympics, because that'd just be obviously what his ultimate dream as an athlete would be.
Yeah, no doubt. And several other athletes that'll be out there as well. And this track team has some talent beyond just Nick Harbor. And Tyler, I think we need to mention Jamisha Ford, who has kind of emerged, I don't want to say out of nowhere, but it's been a little bit overshadowed just how good she has been on the women's side. She was the 200-meter indoor champion. I guess that would have been in March. And as a freshman at South Carolina has just been incredible. And she was a indoor first-team All-American, indoor All-SEC, SEC Freshman Runner of the Year, and really is kind of the next, I would say, superstar on the women's side for South Carolina track. So worth mentioning her, and go check out Mike's article as it mentions everybody that's on there. We don't want to just, it's awesome for Nick Harbor because we cover football, but
for sure.
Lots of talented girls and guys on there.
He may be the thing that kind of gets you in the door of watching it, but yes, tons of great athletes. And again, this is a program that's had a long history and a lot of success and a lot of great, champions of the NCAA that hopefully we'll see more of starting tonight as they go through the weekend, crowning them out there in Oregon, where, again, there's probably a few folks that are still mad that Nick Harbor didn't commit there.
Yeah, or maybe they probably start recruiting him while he's out there again.
That's true.
In today's age, but
just lock him up when he's not out there running an event.
I will not speak that into existence. I apologize, but yeah, ESPN2 tonight. If they make it to the finals on Saturday, ESPN. Be sure to check that out.
Absolutely, and we'll talk about that tomorrow, as well as whatever the updates for the coaching search are at this point tomorrow morning as well. This has. Stumbling on my words here. This has been the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Coming up next is the halftime show with Terry Ford. As he'll continue to dive into this, take some different angles on what we're looking at with these coaches that could potentially taking over the helm here at South Carolina. Of course, talk plenty of football as well as we get closer and closer to the start of the 2024 football season. That's all coming up next on the halftime show here on The Game.
Almost noon, which means it is officially time for lunch. And as Tyler said, this show is presented by Firehouse Subs. Each and every episode is. No matter where you are in the Midlands, there's a Firehouse Subs near you. If you want to try something new, why not try this new barbecue Cuban? It is Southern roots with a Cuban twist. Or go with my still number one in the power rankings, brisket add bacon. Doesn't have to be National Brisket Day for you to order it. Promise you, you'll like it. But regardless of what your tastes are, regardless of what your favorites are, there is a Firehouse sub for you.